Many things are still a baffling mystery in our world. Science doesn't quite yet have all the answers or all the keys to unlock the secrets of our universe. Every day, somewhere, someone sees something they can't explain. Something that we're told is not there, is not real, or simply doesn't exist. Too many reliable people tell of sightings and encounters with the unknown. The myths, legends, folklore, and old wives' tales are usually based in fact and in reality. When a witness to such a strange encounter finds no one believes them and faces ridicule from people they trust and love, they turn to us.
We're fixing to have a person to call in named Jeff from Mississippi, and he has had some awesome encounters and everything. So when he gets on, we're
going to let him talk. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, we're going to let him talk. Mm-hmm. And he said he was calling right now. I'm not sure if he's made it or not. There he is.
There he is. I heard it ding. Hey, Jeff.
Hi. How you guys tonight?
Doing good.
I'm fine as the frog's hair split 3 ways.
I'm Jeff Williams. I'm from North Mississippi. I've had a couple of encounters over since I was real small. The last one was around 74, 75. Yes, ma'am.
Go ahead. I'm listening. I'm very interested in your.
Okay. Well, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a veteran law enforcement officer. I am retired from that now. But back during the 60s, and I can remember exactly the first time I saw something when I was a small child during the 60s. My mom and dad had went to see the first Walking Tall movie at a drive-in theater in Starkville, Mississippi. Anyway, they didn't want me to watch the movie. But just to make this short, I watched it anyway from the back seat. I was supposed to be laying down not watching it, but I did anyway. Well, anyway, we were coming home, and we drove, there's a big forested area here in north central Mississippi that we had to drive across gravel roads. We were coming from that movie that night, and I can remember sitting up between, behind them in the seat, and I saw something cross the road in front of Mom and Dad up there, and it went up an embankment to the left of us, and what I saw was a huge man, and he had hair all over him, and now the embankment, the road was flat, kind of hilly, it's kind of a hill in front of us, but there was a big embankment cut through this hill, and it went up to the left, kind of, I'd say about 8 feet high. Well, this thing more or less leaned against this hill and walked its way, hands and feet, up this rise, this about 10-foot rise, and went on into the woods. And it happened pretty fast. I can remember Mom and Daddy looking at each other like, what in the world was that? But, I don't remember really them saying anything besides looking at each other. And I have asked them since then, do they remember it? And they said no. I don't understand why they don't remember it, but
they don't want to remember it.
They may not want to remember it. But anyway,
Jeff, tell us about your grandfather.
Oh yeah, yes. When I was really small, my grandfather was Choctaw Indian, and he was full-blooded. And anyway, he would always tell us when we were really small not to go playing in those woods down there. Of course, we had woods pretty much all the way around us, and he'd say, "Don't
he
go
was telling
out
you not
there."
To go play, wasn't he?
He was telling us not to go play in those woods. He said, "Stay up here around the house because that old red devil is down there." That's what he called it, and he would tell us that constantly. But being kids like we were, we were little Indians too, I guess. So we just didn't pay much attention to it, and we went out there and played. But I can remember him telling us, many times, stay out of those woods because that red devil's there. Well, that's what he was talking about. That is exactly what he was talking about. He knew because he had hunted, lived, around these wooded areas his whole life. So, He was born in 1912, I believe is correct. Anyway, all right, going forward a little bit, several years later, I was around age 14, 15, I think. I think it was 15 because I had just talked my dad into letting me buy my own hunting rifle. And I was about the age of 15, and I loved to hunt. I loved to go to the woods, and just spend time. I had gotten out of school one day, and it was hunting season. And you don't get home to around, 3:30, maybe 4, something like that. You don't have much time left in the wintertime to hunt. So I was in a hurry. I just grabbed that hunting rifle, and I went south of my house on a small dirt road to the railroad tracks, and I was going to turn and go to my left and go to the east to a place I knew was a really good place. When I walked up on that railroad track off of that gravel road, I looked down through there, and there was the biggest man thing I had seen in my life. He was huge, and he had hair on. The only thing I can think to tell you, he had to have been at least 8 foot. He was huge. And he wasn't just huge, he was barrel-chested. Yeah, he was barrel-chested. I mean, he was massive through his chest area. And anyway, all of a sudden froze, and I thought, well, I'm looking at him, he's looking at me, and he's maybe 100 yards from me, but I can see him plain enough to see, pretty much that his face doesn't have hair on it, but he's got hair all over him. And I thought, what in the world is that? Well, I back off the railroad track, I back up, and I'm thinking to myself, something ain't, and I've always been trained not to point a gun at somebody. My daddy raised me really strictly under that directive. Anyway, that time I kind of threw that out the window because I eased back up there with that rifle, looking through the scope. Now, I didn't plan on shooting anything. I was looking through that scope because I wanted to see him better. Well, when I went back up to that track with that scope, looking through that scope, he wasn't there. He was gone. So I guess it was probably either that night, maybe the next night, one of those 2 nights, I was in my bedroom, had curtains up, but we didn't have, they were just pulled to the sides, We didn't have any blinds. Me and my brother just didn't have any blinds. Anyway, I was in the bedroom doing something, and the end of the bunk bed, he slept up high, and I slept down low. The end of the bunk bed was right there by the only window in that room. And I remember I started to walk around the end of that bunk bed, and I looked out that window, and this thing was there looking at me. I could tell that his arms were up on the roof of the house. It looked like he had grabbed the roof of the house and leaned down, and his face was right in that window. Just an inch or so from that window. And he was looking at me. Yeah. This thing didn't have any hair on its face. It didn't have a mustache. It didn't have a beard. It had, I would say, an old leathery type skin. The eyes, I'm not talking about a brilliant gold, but they were gold. It looked like they, they were a yellowish gold. And he was looking dead in my eyes. I was looking at him, and the first thought in my mind was go under that bunk bed. I wasn't going by that window close to it.
Yeah.
So I went up under the bunk bed, went out the door, and I went down there and told my mom, I said, something looking in my window. And she really didn't believe me. She went up and looked out the front door and all, but she didn't see anything. And, of course, I was scared the rest of the night. I don't think I slept at all that night. But, it didn't look like it was any threat to me. It didn't threaten me anyway. Anything like that. Now, my law enforcement career started way years after that. And I haven't seen anything since probably 1975, 76, somewhere in there. That was the last time I saw that. But I have heard things in the woods here. I still live very close to that area, within 3 or 4 or 5 miles of that sighting.
Do you hear any rock tapping or
I have never heard a wood knock that I know of. I've never heard that, but I have heard them scream, and it's unlike a big Brahma bull or something like that. I know what they sound like. I know what a bull sounds like. And this is even deeper. It's really, really weird. And when they do that,
it feels like it vibrates the floorboards, don't it?
It does. It does. It really does. And it just runs through you. You know, what in the world was that? You know. Well,
didn't you say you had your car running when you heard it?
Yes. The first time I heard that, I was sitting in a car. I had the windows down, but I was sitting in a car and I heard this thing, and I mean, it was mad. It was mad. And I heard it sitting inside that car, and this thing had to have been half a mile from me when I heard it, and it still, shook the ground. So, and then once after that, I was walking, and there's an old road that goes down through there. People in this area walk that road, it's an old gravel road, goes down into a bottom land. There's no houses down it or anything like that, so people like to walk there. Well, I've walked down through there, and I've heard the same thing. And one thing I noticed about it, the next time I heard it, was the dogs around that neighborhood to the north of me. They sounded like they went to, like they were panicked. They heard it. They were panicked. And I thought to myself, that's really weird. It didn't really scare me. And I was down there walking. It didn't really scare me. But, it panicked those dogs. They knew something was out of place. Something was wrong. When you're down there and it's really quiet, and you hear that, and then you hear the dogs back behind you to the north of you, and you can hear those dogs around those houses sound like they're panicking. Well, something's out of place. And that there was something out of place.
That's about the time I'd go and say, all right, folks, it's time to hit the house.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Right.
Well, have you seen any signs in the woods there?
I hadn't really. I mean, I have seen sticks crossed and, things like that. But, as far as knowing whether they were natural or something made that or something like that, I'm not sure. I've seen that, though, yes. As far as wood knocks, I've never heard anything like a wood knock that I really knew that's what it was or anything. So like I said, though, I've heard several times them screaming. And you immediately.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just asking if you had ever found any tracks.
I've never found any tracks. No, I've never seen any tracks. I think that several times when I was hunting when I was older, I've stopped hunting now. I don't do it anymore. But I felt like when I would be down there that something, like you come in after dark, you have to walk a long way to get back to the road from that bottom land there. You can always feel like it just feels like something's there watching you, and you can't find it. You'll have a flashlight, you can't find it. Of course, you can't prove anything by that. But I'm a 100% believer because I have seen. Once you've seen one of these guys, you know them.
Yeah.
So,
and that's like what we were talking about earlier.
Right.
Don't let anybody tell you they're real. Don't believe they're real until you see it yourself.
Until you see it yourself, and then you know for a fact it's there. That's true. That's true.
Yep.
But the main thing about it is, too, if somebody says they've seen something, you don't need to rip them to shreds and tear them to pieces and destroy their reputation like a lot of people are doing today. That's why I got out and started looking, So,
yeah, right.
Jeff, let me ask you this real quick. With you being, having been an LEO, do people, like if you talk, when you're talking to people, do they tend to want to believe you a little bit more because of your service to the community?
I think so. I think that your reputation means a lot before, during, and after a law enforcement career.
Yeah.
these days, you know, things are changing a lot. But I think that yes, that I've always been one of those people that was straightforward, matter of fact. So I kind of fit well into that job. I did it as a career for 25 years. So.
Yeah. Well, thank you for your service doing that.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. Yes. As far as other sightings near here, there was a kid on a mini bike on that same railroad track we were talking about earlier in another county. That track goes through across Mississippi to the Delta, and it's all grown up now. There's nothing but rails there now. But anyway, there was a kid on a mini bike sometime around, later on, that was riding, and he went down to that railroad track and was turning around or something, and he looked over there, and it was one standing there. And I saw that report, I think BFRO or maybe TBRC or one of those later on. And also in this same area, there's on the other side of this bottomland that we live near, it starts back uphill. There's a town over there. There was a report over there that a man later on in years had went to this area above this bottomland. It was kind of high where he was at. And he set up telescopes because it's really dark there. It's really dark. He was setting up telescopes to see the stars, what have you. And anyway, he got out, got his telescope set up, and it was about dark, and then he waited till it got really good and dark and got out and was going to, look through his telescopes, do whatever he was doing there. And he said that there was a family of these things or something. There was more than one. And he said that they ran him off. He left his telescope standing there. He said it got so bad that he said he never saw them, but he knew what they were. And he said that, they were like giant apes or something, and they were, they were all around him, and they were mad that he was there. So, and that happened some years later.
You wonder if he set up in a sacred spot, a place that was sacred to them.
Wow.
That's very likely that something like that could have happened, or some reason that he interfered in their hunting, or something had to have happened, because he said they were. He left the telescope sitting there till the next day, and I think that pretty much ended his career going out, somewhere like that, doing that.
Well, there's a famous Mississippi howl. And you describe the dogs getting upset, and in the Mississippi howl, you can hear the dogs barking, going off, and everything.
Right.
Now, I've experienced that too. So, is this sort of what you were hearing?
Yes, that's correct. And it's it.
How far are you from that? How far are you from that Mississippi howl?
I would say less than a mile. It would have been less than a mile the first time. And then the second time, I would have had to have been probably a quarter mile or less from that. From that. And the weird thing is, you got to, automatically the dogs start, it's just like they were terrorized. They weren't barking at this thing, but they were terrorized, It's like, I'm running up under the porch on this one, guys, because it's, it's really weird. So
it's all yours, huh?
All yours, yes. And you notice that. You notice when that happens. Of course, I wasn't really afraid. Yes, it shook me. I wasn't really afraid because I carry a firearm with me. Being retired law enforcement, I can do that. So I always have a firearm with me, and especially if I go down there somewhere. But
that was something that we figured out from the get-go. If you take a firearm with you and you go to a spot that you have spotted Bigfoot or you see signs of him and you've heard it, he's not going to come around too much. But if you can leave it in the car, but I'm saying not have one on your person. But if they know you, it's like they know you've got a gun.
It is. I believe so. Yes, and I tell you, over the years, I've always just had that. I guess a sixth sense, knowing that something is there, I always had that, especially when I would be hunting and come out late, after dark, when it get too dark to see it come on out.
But you never felt threatened.
I never felt threatened. I never did. Mm-hmm. I never did. I never would run from it. I'd take that flashlight and look all around. But, and since I was little, I knew they were there. And they've never bothered anybody here, except for that, that I know of, that guy with the telescopes that night. And they never came out on him, but he knew they were there. They let him know they were there. So,
what about eye shine? Has anybody seen any eye shine in your area?
Well, the only eye shine that I've ever seen is like through that window that night. That ambient light, the light from that bedroom light was in his eyes. And that's the reason I can tell you what color their eyes are, because I saw it that up close and personal. I wasn't 6 feet from this thing, and he was right against the window looking at me, and his eyes are huge. His eyes are bigger than an egg. They're huge, they're goldish colored. Now I'm not saying they're bright or anything like that. They were just eyes, but they were a yellowish, goldish color. They were different from ours.
Kind of an amber color.
Yeah. Well, I would say more gold than that.
What about like wolf size?
Yeah, I would say something like that. You know how wolf's eyes are different from ours, but only a lot huger. And,
I've got a timber wolf, and she's got beautiful golden eyes.
Yeah, right. So it's like that. Yes. The face, it had little wrinkles in it. It wasn't bad, but it was a leathery brownish, and the hair was really a reddish. I would say the hair's a reddish black. Yeah, red devil. Right.
Yeah.
And but
what kind of mouth expression did it have? Did it have a closed mouth, or did it grin? Did it grin at you?
It was closed mouth. It didn't make any expression. It just right there in that one spot looking at me.
Wow.
And the mouth is wide, of course, proportion with the face. I didn't see any ears. I didn't see, I don't know if the hair was over, but I remember seeing that full-on face right in front of me. The mouth is thin. It doesn't have lips as like we do, but there is a protrusion more at the top than the bottom. And, of course, the face is leathery. There was no hair on the face whatsoever. Eyebrows, I don't know. I'll be honest with you, I don't know, even looking back right now, whether the thing had eyebrows or not. I don't know.
What about his nose? The one I saw did not have the flat nose like they show on the one that I saw up close.
Well, it
did not have a flat nose.
Well, this one was flat. It was flat and wide and spread out at the bottom, yes.
Oh, it was wide now. I didn't, but it didn't look flat to me.
Yeah, but He didn't look like he was threatening, anything like that. It's just whenever I turned around from whatever I was doing in that bedroom, next bedroom was probably 12 by 12. I had to go around the end of that bunk bed by that window, and I didn't because I saw him, but I had to get out of that room. He was too close to me, and all I could think about was getting out of that room. And,
I thought he was curious, and he wanted to, check you out, like, hey, what's up?
Yeah, I think that he was just as curious about me when he saw me on that railroad track as I was him. Is what I think. And he came to see me. Is what I think.
Well, this is what I take up from what you're saying. All right, you knew they would exist. All right, you saw him, and you had a gun in your hand, but he saw your heart intent and that you wasn't going to harm him. He followed you home. Now, even though you've had such a tremendous face-to-face fighting with him, you have not went out and tried to hunt them down or trap them in any way. And, and they were looking at your heart, and they could feel that from you from the get-go, and I believe that.
Well, I do. I honestly believe that you're right about that, yes. And I've never meant them any harm. And like I said, when I went out on that railroad track that day, I had the gun in my hands, right? I had the scope on there. I could look at him right then. But I backed off the railroad track. Like I said, my dad was really strict on us about where we pointed that gun, So I didn't want, if this was a human being, I didn't want him to see me point that gun at him. So what I did was backed out, and then I put that scope up where he couldn't see me, and I eased back up at that track to take a look at him. Well, all I could see through that scope was railroad track in the distance. He wasn't there. I mean, he was gone that fast.
But your first thought was that he was a human being to start with.
Yes, well, but the only problem, though, was he was way too huge. He was way too huge to be a normal human being. So I knew something was wrong. That's why I eased back out with that scope to look, and he wasn't there.
What about the hair on his body? Was it long, shaggy, short? What? How was his arms?
It was long. I would, looking back, I would guess that probably his hair had to have been a foot long, probably shaggy.
Wow.
Yeah, it was long. Yeah.
It'd be winter time too.
Real quick, going back to the guns, Mary Catherine and I carry pistols when we go out. And it's not because of them. It's because we know that there's hogs and other things out there that, if you get charged, you definitely want to have protection for it.
Yeah. Yes, and
but like you said, they see your heart. They know that those guns are not for them.
Right.
And I think they understand that, we are, even though we're supposed to be, the superior, or, top of the food chain kind of thing, it's, there's so many things that can hurt us because, that's why we have to hunt with guns and, bows.
To be honest with you, I was just thinking back, and even that night when he came up and looked through that window like that, I never really felt threatened. Sure, I wasn't going close to that window, and I got a start from it, but I never felt like that he was threatening me in any way.
And you was 15 at this age, right?
I was 15 years.
Yeah.
And
30 and 10.
Yeah, right. But
well, you know what? He might have been coming to thank you for not trying to shoot him.
He could have been. I think that, like somebody said earlier, I think that he was just curious about me. He'd seen me. He was curious about me. Who knows what the mental, age they are. I've heard stories over the past where they like listening to children play and stuff like that. Yeah. So maybe, he was just really curious about me, I think. Is the reason he came to see me that night. And I've never felt threatened since then. I mean, I've been in the woods, millions of times, hunting and fishing and whatever, and I've never felt threatened down there in that same place. So it didn't stop me from going. I kept right on hunting, but I never saw anything. I actually never saw him after that.
Wow. Me and Mary Catherine got rushed one night, but we had other people with us, and some people
they were cutting too.
The reason why they did like the bluff rush on us was because they didn't, they weren't comfortable with us having strangers out there, and it wasn't just because they know me and Mary Catherine. Of course, they know her, but I've been down there enough with her to actually, where they do know me and stuff like that. So, well, damn it. At it again.
All that stuff.
but I can remember from a very small age, my granddaddy was Choctaw Indian, full-blooded, and he would tell us to stay out of those woods because that red devil's down there. Stay away from that red devil. And that's what he was talking about. And we always pretty much knew. I'm sorry?
Let me ask you this. You've got Native American. I have. Have the others got a little Native American in them?
Right. My family was
I'm Cherokee Creek. I've got Cherokee Creek in me, and I do follow. I'm very into my heritage, and I do follow some of the ways that they work, and their respect for what their experiences were with them. I believe they were very close.
That's my point. That's my point. I think the Bigfoot can pick up on that respect.
Right, I believe so too. my granddad passed away in 72, and I wish now 1,000 times I would have asked him more before he passed away about that red devil. It just never, it never came up. Nothing ever. And I went to the woods with him lots, even after, after I'd first seen it that night when we were coming from watching the movie Walking Tall. I went to the woods with him lots of times. But I never thought to ask him about it, that red devil. He would just always tell us when we were real young, stay out of those woods. I don't know. I wish 1,000 times now that I had to ask him more about that red devil, because he would have told me. He would have told me what he knew.
Yeah.
I've always wanted to go to the Creek Nation and sit down and talk to them about the hairy man. They call him the hairy man now. Yeah, back then. And that's but that's something, because they call it Indian legends. No, legends, they have to come from somewhere, and
that's right.
And so I can just see your grandfather going in these woods, and I can see him being very observant to all his surroundings, because I know that when I go into the woods, a lot of people think I'm just walking through there, and Ashley can tell you I can pick out something that's not right and go right to it right at the start. So I know from being observant myself, I know your grandfather being full-blooded Native American, that he was very observant with all his surroundings, not just part of them.
Yeah,
and
his thing in life was hunting and fishing. I mean, he was constantly hunting and fishing back in those days. I went with him lots of time. I can tell you something about my grandfather. He wasn't that social or anything like that. He had a shop where he did he worked on vehicles and stuff like that, But he passed away in pretty close to that same area, about 5 miles from there. He actually passed away in the woods. There was a little bitty pond. There was a little bitty pond that I know where it's at now, but I didn't know it back then when he passed away. My dad did, because he found him. But there was a small pond on the side of that railroad track that they had dug when they built the railroad in there. And that pond, he would sit. There was a cross tie buried in the ground, upright. One end of it was buried in the ground, and he would go and sit and watch that little pond and watch the deer come up and drink. He had little deer friends that he would sit there and talk to.
Wow.
And that's where he passed away. He was leaning against that post. My dad knew that he would go down there a lot. He didn't know exactly where, but he found his car parked, pretty near there. And they couldn't, it was late at night, and they couldn't find him. And anyway, my dad went down there and found him sitting there. So he passed away, with his dear friends, which I think is a good thing. But, I hated losing him.
Way to go.
Yeah. But he was pure Indian. I'm telling you, he did have a car, but he lived and breathed the whole way. He sure did.
Mm-hmm. We would all be better if we still did.
We would. We sure would. And I sure loved him. I sure loved and still love him a lot. But yeah, that's all I really know to tell y'all. Now, my brother's a true believer. I've never sat down and talked to my brother, and I was just with him today. But he bound to have seen something somewhere in his life, and we've never just sat down and talked about it. And maybe
why
I can
don't you sit down and talk to him and see maybe if he wants to get on a chat with us one day?
I will. I'd love to do that. I'll talk to him. And in fact, he's coming today. I'll ask him about that and just see. But I'm going to tell you something about my brother. I'm not saying he's antisocial, but he doesn't like talking to a lot of people. He's Indian. He's got a lot of Indian blood in him. He just doesn't talk to people.
It comes out in some of us more than it does others.
Yeah. But I'll talk to him. If he wants me to relay it, I'll do that. But, just whatever.
Yeah.
I'll ask him, though. I'll see if he wants to come on and talk to y'all sometime. He's a great guy. He really is.
Do you ever just want to go on a Bigfoot search?
I have always wanted to do that. Yes, I've always wanted to do this. Yes. I just never had the right opportunity at the right time, but I would love to do that, yes.
Yeah. But you never heard any stories from the fellow police officers or anything else around you, around that county that they had encountered?
No, I have never heard anything from the other officers that I can remember. I haven't. And I don't think maybe they...
Do you think that they're too scared to speak up?
Probably, But the reason that I don't see a problem with that because it really happened. This all really happened. Yeah. I mean, and how can you deny that? And I would tell anybody about it. I mean, I'll tell you tomorrow the same thing I told you today, or next year, or 10 years from now. It happened, and that's the reason that I've always felt
we've had several reports from officers, and some up from state troopers, but they don't want their name and everything put out there.
Well, I can't say I blame them because they're supposed to look like these people that just don't believe in that type of thing, or UFOs or anything like that. But I'm not like that. When something really happens and I saw it with my own eyes, I know I can tell it. I'm just, I'm not shy.
Well, speaking about UFOs, we were talking earlier tonight. So have you had any encounters of the, unidentified?
I saw something when I was a kid. I don't know what it was. I'm not saying it was a UFO. But I did see something, and that was back, oh my goodness, it would have been in the 70s too. It would have been early 70s. My mom and dad, we were living in a rental house back in those days, and we moved to the actual spot where that I was living when I walked down to that railroad track. And we were building a house there, and my dad had went down there and put the power box on the wall. He was building the house himself. That's what he did. My granddad was a mechanic, but my dad was built houses for the carpenter. Anyway, he was building his own house. Of course, we were all helping, and we were building our own home, And he went that evening and was putting the electrical box on the wall out there. You put it up yourself, or the contractor puts it up, then they come hook it up after it's been inspected. That's what we were out there doing. It was at night. He got off work, came in, wanted to do that, so we were there doing that. And I was holding the flashlight for him while he was up there working on that box, doing something to it. And anyway, something came over the top of us. I didn't see any lights. There was no lights on this thing. And the only thing I could think, it might have possibly been is a dirigible. I could hear a whining sound. I mean, I really don't know. I don't know what it was, but I remember I was holding this big flashlight my dad had, and I shined it up because this thing was just above tree level, and there was great big oak trees there, and it was shaking the leaves on that tree, the one that was directly over. I couldn't see any stars anywhere. This thing completely blacked out whatever was up there. So anyway, the leaves were just shaking. It was just a violent shaking, and you could feel it. You could feel this. Anyway, I know this sounds weird, but I shined the light up on it and was looking at it, and I wouldn't say they were steel girders. It was something different, but the only thing I can even mention it being close to would be some type of steel girders, but it wasn't a steel girder. And
that sounds like the thing that Jimmy and I saw when we went to Little River Canyon, and we thought we were driving under a barn.
Anyway, my dad, when I shifted the light up, I was supposed to be holding it for him. Well, he tells me, shine the light back up here, I can't see. You know how Dad's going to do you. Anyway, I told him, Daddy, there's something up there. And, I remember him looking up, and he said, well, shine the light back up here. I got to get this finished now. I didn't remember his words well. And I shined them back up there.
He didn't care what was there.
No, he didn't. Anyway, whatever it was went on to the north of us, and it had a little bit of a whining sound. It sounded just like maybe if you can imagine what a small electric motor running wide open sounds like, that's what it sounded like. That's what it sounded like. It sounded like it was in overdrive on a small electric motor. And but now I can't say that was a UFO or anything like that, but it's something strange. And the only thing I could think maybe possibly it could have been a dirigible. And I just didn't know.
What is a dirigible?
A dirigible is, you know what the Hindenburg was? A huge balloon that the Goodyear
Zeppelin.
balloon. Yeah.
A Zeppelin.
Right. And I don't know that. I don't know what it was, but I know it was weird. And
but it had no lights.
It didn't have any lights. I didn't see any lights at all. No, it was completely dark. And what I shined the lights on was I would have to say a dark gray, something like that, you know. But I don't know what it was. I have no clue what it was. And at that same time, there were several people around. Of course, that was the UFO years, is what I call that time period. There was a lot of people reporting back in those days. But I don't know what it was.
And Dorothy, you said you saw something. You and Jim saw something similar.
Yeah, we did when we went to Little River Canyon. We drove off going to the store. Well, it was the time we stayed in that old log cabin up there. We drove off to the store and got turned around somehow, we thought, and we drove under this barn thing, and it had the like you said, the rafters and everything. We went to the store and we turned around and went back, and there was nothing there. It was gone. But it was stretched out over the pasture, you know, and we thought we were passing a great big old barn. And
this thing was huge, but it was just above treetop level. It was huge.
Right above treetop level, and you could. It was just there. We just thought, and it had lights on the bottom of the one we saw, though.
I heard it coming.
We thought it was a big barn.
Right.
Okay, I'm going to tell you my UFO encounter. I told you I'd seen something, but I don't know what it is. That's what a UFO is. It's an unidentified flying object.
Right.
One night, my husband and I came home, and we pulled up in the driveway, and there was 3 red lights, and it was right on the treetops, and it was moving so slow. It was about a mile.
Mine was moving really, really slow.
But on the bottom of it had 3 lights, and I said it was a triangle, but the end of the triangles was cut off, and you could tell that it was something there. And I said, "Look at this! Look at this!" And it was going so slow, but you knew it wasn't no star, but it was just right up above those big oak trees out here. And I called Mom and said, "Go outside and look." I said, "Something's out there," But to this day, I don't. It's like I said, I don't want to believe in UFOs because of the encounters and the stuff that I went through with the Bigfoot. I mean, I'd like to lost my mind because it scared me so bad. But I imagine, but I'm not saying that people that have had encounters are lying. I just don't want. I refuse to try to comprehend it, is all I'm saying. And I'm not going to say that you didn't see it and you're crazy or Dorothy's crazy, because I know she's not. She's telling the truth. But the thing about it is there's so many people out there, they encounter things and they're so scared to speak up. And even now they're coming out showing these spacecrafts that the military has recorded and everything. They're coming out with it. So I don't know. I mean, I don't want to get into it myself, but y'all go ahead with your UFOs.
Well, I don't look down on anybody that tells something that they believe in, something that they saw and they believe in. because we don't know all about this world or other worlds yet. We don't know. We don't know those answers. So I don't look down on anybody. I'm open-minded. I like to look at everything, and make my own judgment. But I don't judge other people on what they've seen or what they think about things, because we don't know everything yet. We don't know. So I would never look down on anybody. And I think everybody should come forward. Anybody that has seen something and they know they've seen it with their own eyes, I think they should come forward. I don't think they should feel degraded or anything like that. I don't think, that's just my thoughts. So, and in their mind, that a lot of people won't say anything because they fear ridicule, what have you, But
Well, Jeff, I'll tell you, like we were talking about this a little bit before you called in, and I'm open-minded to a lot of stuff. I've been interested in paranormal and anything out of the ordinary, pretty much my whole life. So, and I was telling them, I lived in New Mexico for 7 years. And I've always loved the outdoors. I was in Albuquerque, and I was right there at the foot of the Sandias and the Manzano Mountains. I'd go hiking all the time. I'd lay outside watching the stars and stuff because we were, since we were so far from the city, I could see the stars real good.
Right.
And I even, I'd be on my roof because we had an adobe-style house. It was flat. And so did a friend of mine. She actually had a deck on it, so I'd spend the night at her house, and we'd take sleeping bags up there. And all those 7 years, with all the time I spent staring at the sky, I never saw anything except for some gorgeous meteor showers. Yeah, and, I like I said, I keep an open mind about it, but I was telling, it's like my dad was in the Air Force, and one day I just, I was messing with him, but I was curious. I said, hey, since you're retired, can you tell me if UFOs are real? And he just looked dead at me and said, I cannot confirm nor deny. And I, that shut my mouth and made my eyes get wide. I was like, wait a minute.
Right, and I can almost hear his tone when he said that. But if you think about what he said told you what you needed to know, right? I mean, if you think about what he said, it meant, I can't tell you, but that is real, right? That's what he said.
Yeah, well, my dad, he's a real honorable man. I mean, he, of course, he's not like these other people that break the confidentiality for classified.
Right, and he's not going to do that.
He doesn't go out looking for money. Yeah.
Right.
So, yeah, but that's just, me. I would put it this way: if they are, I would really like to see one. I don't want to have a close encounter.
Right. That would be scary. It would be scary.
Yeah. I unless they want to sit down and drink a beer or something like that, then that's the only kind of encounter I want.
But Jeff, I've got a scenario for you. Okay. In March of 2012, busload of school children, and the bus driver saw what they called a Bigfoot. And my nephew-in-law was a sheriff down there in Greene County. Now he's a police officer. And the dispatcher came on and says, told them they were laughing about it, and they said, let's see, be aware, all units be aware, said, be sure to stop and get some bananas and keep them in your trunk for the escaped ape that was loose in Greene County. And he laughed about it. Well, they didn't know that was the time that I first started having my encounters the same year, the same month. Okay, now here's what I want to ask you. During your work with the police force, did y'all ever have any bizarre calls? Like Bigfoot, UFO sightings, or paranormal things that you can remember?
I can't. I did it for a lot of years, but I can't remember anything to that effect. I sure can't.
I mean, could you imagine if somebody says, all units be aware there were lights in the sky, or something like that? They never. They never had that?
I never had that. But I can tell you there is a safety manual that is relative. There's a safety manual that law enforcement and firemen get, and it has a section on unidentified flying aerial. There is, yes. If you'll, and I think it's pretty much public knowledge. You could get up with one of your local firemen. They can tell you about it. There's a section in the safety manuals that deals with unidentified flying in case there's a crash, what they need to do, who they need to contact, what they need to do. I don't have one of those manuals now, but I can remember going over it with other officers during the years that I was in training classes, what have you. But there is a manual out there as far, safety, and a volunteer fireman or a regular fireman could probably lead you to it quicker than a law enforcement officer could, because they live
in other words, they exist. Do they, if they call it out over the speaker, do they give it a code or what?
No, I don't
there is
remember.
a code for it. Yes, there is.
Go ahead.
Okay.
Jim had an encounter with one like that. Yep. Nearly got arrested by the men in black.
Yeah. But it's detailed. There's a detailed section in there that tells you who to contact, what you need to do, in case of something like that. But that's just for UFOs. I've never heard anything in my law enforcement classes or training that, pertain to Bigfoot. I never had any of that. Because I would have been an expert on that one all of a sudden. I had seen before. I would have been able to say, yes, I know he's there, but no, I never had any of that.
Well, I was just wondering, because there's a lot of scenarios out there, and but they told you how, through the book, they told you how to deal with it and everything.
Right.
I had an officer come by here one night about 4 o'clock, so I went running through my yard, scared him to death. So, I know that there are officers out there that have encountered, but they're too scared to talk. I mean, they were ragging this officer before anything. So, but that's what I wanted to know too. Go ahead.
I honestly think, though, that my point of view, my own personal thoughts, any officer that sees something like that, officers are out all night. I mean, people don't know this, but they're out there 24/7. I mean, they're out there all the time, day and night. You got your night shift deputies or night shift police officers. They're out there 24/7. If they see something, I think they should let somebody know. I don't know what context. I think it should be a report written, and let other people know that something's going on. It's just my thoughts.
But so many is in fear of losing their job.
Yeah, because they feel like they're going to be ridiculed and they're going to be looked down on because they a lot of them feel like, I think that integrity is more than me telling this. I don't want to say anything. Have you ever seen the videotape where the officer's going down the road? He's got a female in the car with him. I think she's a reporter. And all of a sudden something runs across the road in front of them, and they see it and didn't know what it was. And, I mean, you can see clearly in that video, and that made national news, what have you.
That was in Georgia.
It was, right. And, I think things like that should be brought out to the public. If it had happened to me while I was out here as a deputy in that car, I would have, of course, I would have videotaped it because we had cameras, had all that stuff by then, and I would tell the world if I could. Yes, I wouldn't worry about it. But another thing, I would love to go on a hunt, y'all. I would love to go out one night and just have fun, doing this. I would love to do it here, but I don't know the logistics of that because he is here. There is one here. And seen or heard in a long time, but he's here.
That sounds fun. We'll come over their house.
There you go.
I'd love to come out there and check it out.
Yeah.
How about you,
got
Dorothy?
property that we can
Yeah.
go on. I mean, we could do that. If
Right,
you got
right. Y'all come over
some
sometime. I'll
dedicated
be
property.
Yeah, I'll be glad to
All right.
escort you around. Show you the general area here, and it's prime area too.
Yeah,
All
I've
right.
got a
Mary
GoPro
Catherine, I'm going to
and
let you close it out, okay?
All right, it is getting about that time. Well, we do appreciate Jeff from Mississippi being with us and giving us account of his encounters with his Bigfoot
Thank y'all
all these
so
years.
very much for having me tonight.
And we do appreciate Dorothy and all of her hard work, and I appreciate Ashley Jacob joining up with us too. And I'm Mary Catherine Scruggs, and we're Alabama Bigfoot Society. And if you would like to come and be a part of our podcast sometime, send us a text message on Facebook, and Mary Catherine Cunningham Scruggs or Dorothy Sullivan, Ashley Jacobs. We'd love to have you to come on and be a part of us. And we do, like I said, I do appreciate Jeff, because I know, I told him, I said, when we started this up, he was the first one to pop in my mind. And I think he's been an excellent witness and everything. So I'd like to wish everybody a good night, and God bless. Till next week.
If you like this video, I hope you give us a like. If you like what we're doing down here in Alabama, I do hope that you subscribe to the channel. And I guess with all that being said, before the mosquitoes and flies eat me up, I'll see you next time on the next Alabama adventure, getting close to Bigfoot, and Chico and I will see you on down the road.